Security Dossier, securing the perimeter.
Welcome to the program, Security Dossier. I am Lawrence Audu, your host. Security Dossier focuses on security issues in Nigeria and beyond, as well as efforts being made by Nigerian security agencies to protect lives and properties of citizens and, of course, in the defense of the territorial integrity of Nigeria. Today on the program, we'll be looking at the uncovered plots by some foreign interests working to derail the May 29 handover. The Nigerian army has said some foreign interests are working to truncate Nigeria's democracy with plots to disrupt the May 29 handover, which marks the beginning of President Muhammadu Buhari-led second term. According to the Director of Army Public Relations, Colonel Sagir Musa, the Army has noted with great concern the efforts by some unpatriotic individuals, groups and foreign interests to determine to cause mischief and exacerbate the security situation in the country in particular and the West African sub-region in general. This will be the focus of the program today, but before then, we'll take a quick break.
Of security in Nigeria has two modes of tolerance, and this is what I would like to describe now. One is this, that Nigerians are guilty or can be said to be guilty for the situation so far. The complaint given by the Inspector General of Police is that that the police does not have enough money to fight crimes. And this is why I'm surprised. Is there not a budget being granted by the National Assembly and for the police to operate with and as to fight crime? There is. If the budget is not effective, if it's insufficient, then why delay in making an application and for a quick response by the government? Who is to be blamed if the police are failing to take what is required as a precautionary measure and as to enhance their services being rendered well?
As people are talking of police and the army, there are people that is higher than them who don't even allow them to do the work, function very well. And some of them are criminals. People call criminals, and most of them are in the government, they hold power. So there is nothing you can do to them except if mystic people come in. They are the people who can trust them, and they will not allow them to come in because they are the problem of the country. I advise the federal government to put more hand into some people that want to help into the work of security to see that the deplorable condition is ameliorated.
You have to use that, know where the criminal they are sitting. So if the government come and you come used with the traditional rulers and the youth, inshallah, this problem will be solved.
After a brief stint with the Nigerian army, Abiola Olajide now works as a security consultant. He speaks to us on the issue at stake and other security-related matters.
Only recently, about a few days ago, the Army Public Relations, Director of Army Public Relations, Sagir Musa, said that the Nigerian Army has uncovered plots by some elements within and outside the country, especially foreign interests who are trying to destabilize the country, especially in the run-up to the May 29th inauguration ceremony, which marks the beginning of the second term of President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, when we begin to hear things like this, especially coming from the Nigerian military, what should one expect?
For the military to issue such statement, it means they are simply being proactive and taking preemptive steps to actually protect the territorial integrity of this country, which is their primary mandate to do. And it also means that they've been very, very effective at gathering, processing intelligence. because which they cannot share with the public. They can only hint us and share some of the information regarding the efforts they've been making, and that is keeping the public abreast of some of their activities and how do you put this now? Some of the things, the steps they've actually taken to nip some of these threats in the bud before they manifest themselves. So it is their place, because they do have the Directorate of Military Intelligence, which cuts across the arms of service, and it is their duty within their purview, jurisdictional purview, to actually handle that aspect, anything that threatens the safety of this nation as a sovereign one. So I think their statement is very, very well in order. It's not a political one, and it should actually give the public more confidence that we have a military that is alive to its responsibilities.
Now, some Nigerians are already saying that this is a conspiracy theory coming from the army. How do you react to this?
In every society, there is a right to the freedom of expression of opinions and views. Everybody, whether the simpleton to the expert to the professional, will always have an opinion. But to a large extent, even regardless of the cluelessness or the competence of a country, in any country in the world, they always are privy to certain intelligence and certain information that the average citizen or even the average operative in government will not have access to. And this is why it is called intelligence gathering. They are not meant to make the details of their intelligence, public or common information that they just disseminate to the public. So anybody can actually attribute any motive to such kind of statement or pronouncement from the military, but they have more access to information than anybody or any ordinary citizen does.
Now, from all indication, it's very clear that you are on the same page with the Nigerian military as regards these threats coming from foreign elements. Now, if you're talking about these foreign elements, who should we be looking at?
We should be looking at perhaps political interests, because each nation does have foreign policies. So you never can tell what the political ideology of each or the political objectives of each sovereign nation is, especially with regards to their foreign policy objectives. So you have political interest, and some of these political interests could interfere with the interest of a nation. So it could be that you have foreign political interests who are working in cahoots with internal political organizations to actually destabilize the country or trigger chaos and anarchy within the country that will give rise to certain diplomatic problems or issues.
Are the elements, the foreign elements, are there
There could be corporations, there could be government, though it's not in the place, because we usually have these high-wired or high-level plottings, especially when it comes to diplomacy. You can never understand or pinpoint with precision or accuracy whereas, an ordinary citizen or a non-looking citizen that, okay, this is the likelihood of where some of these ideological shenanigans are coming from. So it is for you to gather this information, process it, identify the sources. It could be from corporations, oil companies, business interests, or even nations themselves. History is replete with foreign relations objectives of some countries to actually interfere in the affairs of another country. So based on certain political objectives, either to change the government, either to destabilize the government for, business reasons whatsoever. We've seen these things play out in South America. We see it playing out in Syria today. We see it play out in Yemen. We saw it play out in Libya, whereby we see it playing even after the Arab Spring and the deposition of Muammar Gaddafi. We see a number of Western countries and Middle Eastern countries essentially fighting a proxy war in Libya after the deposition of Muammar Gaddafi. So these things are very, very complex. So sometimes they just have to follow the money, sometimes they just have to follow some of these activities. So if, like they do say, if something is legal and legitimate, it's going to be done in the open. So especially with regards to the political activities of the different political parties. So like we still go back to the beginning where I said that these people are privy to certain intelligence and information that average citizens or commoners, or even for someone like me who has a background in the military, while I was in the military, there are certain things I never had, that I was never privy to, but just the intelligence branch of the military were privy to it. And you still have different strata of the intelligence branch who are privy to certain levels based on clearances of information.
Now, Amnesty International is one organization that Nigerians have been, especially the people in the military circle, have been very skeptical about, especially some of their reports. Do you think this has anything to do with them?
Well, it could be and it may not be. You never can say, because the military has not especially mentioned any names. They've not put out the name of any corporate organization out there. So it's going to be very, very wrong, to speculate and then at the same time, mention names as regards to the activities, or whether the activities of certain organization is conflicting with the sovereignty of our nation, of our country as Nigeria. It's Amnesty International's primary mandate is to expose certain human rights infraction and to ensure that military, quasi-military, sectarian organizations abide by certain tenets of engagement, especially with regards to things like prosecuting the efforts against insurgency and abiding strictly with military engaging with combatants and also with civilians as well, that as much as they do not violate these human rights. And in some cases, most of the time, the information available to the Amnesty International are often not validated or authenticated. They are not fact-checked. So they just run with conspiracy theories sometimes, and then or with fake news at times. I think they will need to do more to put boots on the ground and carry out real investigative journalism to fact check certain speculations, especially with regards to the activities of the military and also with the activities of the criminals themselves, especially those that have been apprehended and those that have been questioned.
No, you see, for some time now, we have seen situations where Amnesty International and some of these organizations, Transparency International and all that, when terrorists kill civilians, you don't hear condemnation from them. But when civilians there are issues where you have like a few casualties on the part of the civilians, these guys begin to cry foul.
They blow it out of proportion, essentially. So I think that's very, very unfair. It goes against even their own tenets, because they are meant to give equal coverage and equal scrutiny to both parties, the criminal elements, the terrorists, the insurgents, the kidnappers, or whoever it is that has violated the constitution or the penal code of the country. So it is expected of them to give coverage to the crimes perpetrated by these criminal elements as is, without any form of embellishment, without any form of exaggeration, and report with accuracy, verify numbers, whether it is number of casualties, and not relying on third parties, but going into the fields themselves to actually fact check with regards, because we are talking about human lives and property here, and it's not something that has to be treated with levity and with a wave of hand. It's something they have to undertake with due diligence, going to the field, going to the hospitals where victims are being treated, or the mortuaries where victims of whatsoever crime, either bomb blast or raids on community by bandits and killer marauders and all of that. So it is very, very expected of them. And the same way as well, cover the activities of the military with exactitude and with accuracy, without fear, without bias whatsoever.
Now, coming to general security assistance within the country, the continued incarceration of Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, the leader of the Islamic movement of Nigeria,
Yes.
has continued to cause stir and leading to violent confrontations, mostly between the sect members and the Nigerian military. Do you think the federal government has the locus to still continue keeping the man in detention?
Well, because I think that is still very much before the law courts, and I believe that one of the best human rights activists and legal luminary in the country, Femi Falana, has actually made some pronouncements in that regard. And because it is still before the law court, I'm not a lawyer myself, I wouldn't know the details of some of the intelligence information you understand in the hands of the federal government, and there are reasons for still keeping him in protective private custody, because it's not in general incarceration or the general prison, in protective private custody, where the government is spending a lot of money to ensure his welfare, his safety, overall welfare and his safety. But I understand, I do not have, again, I'm not speaking as an authority with regards to some of the legal dynamics or the constitutional dynamics of this case, because there are no two cases that are the same, especially when it comes to national security. There are certain things you, even as a legal practitioner, as an individual, you will not be privy to, because we've had the Supreme Court of Nigeria making a pronouncement that when it comes to national security, certain human rights are actually suspended. The details of that is in the public domain. It can be googled. So I would not speak so much, but I strongly believe that based on superior understanding and judgment informed by quality intelligence, they have reasons for actually keeping him in private protective custody.
Okay, now after the general elections, the narrative of insecurity has changed. From headsmen, today we're hearing of kidnapping and banditry. Before the elections, we had issues like Fulani headsmen, which has, to a large extent, created a form of stereotype against a particular ethnic group. Because, of course, if you have a few criminals within a particular ethnic group, doesn't mean that the generality of the entire ethnic group is criminals too. But the narrative seems to have changed a little, especially after the elections. Now we are seeing something different. What is your reaction?
Well, it's unfortunate that most things are usually politicized and often adulterated with ethnicity and religion in this climate, especially giving the ethnic narrative to the issue of the killers that were ravaging communities, and the hasty conclusions with every single communal crime of murder or mass killings, attributing it to a specific ethnicity. Crimes are committed all over the world, and I can tell you for free, based on data and statistics, that Nigeria is not one of the crime capitals of the world. When you look at societies like the United States or even a state like Chicago, when you look at the gun violence, the genocide, the homicide crime committed there, the numbers and the statistics, you keep wondering why they've not politicized that along the Republican or the Democrat or along the white, black or Hispanics. But yeah, because they politicize and ethnicize, and if for want of a proper word, religionize every social or criminal issue, it has made it very, very difficult to fight many of these crimes. Like I do tell people that many of the herds of cattle you see grazing in the southwest are actually owned by Southerners who merely employ Fulani herders because of their experience in caring for these animals. We do not see, as we used to see perhaps in the 40s, in the 50s, whereby people graze their cattle all the way even from Niger, they cross the border because of the vegetation. They don't even graze up to the southern part of the country. Recently I was traveling to the east. It was my first visit to the east, and on top of the Niger Bridge, at the bank of the Niger Bridge, I saw herds of cattle grazing peacefully beside farms, and there were Fulani people there. So which tells you that there's really no ethnic, this is really not an ethnic issue, and this is not even really a herder-farmer conflict. So you go around the southwest, you see corporate organizations, religious organizations holding herds of cattle, but do not have ranches. So they employ many of these Fulani people to help them graze their cattle. So if, for instance, many of those cattle wander into somebody's farmlands, they will not, on behalf of the owners of the cattle, go and destroy the person's farmlands or go on a killing rampage. So there is more to the proliferation of weapons from Niger, Chad, especially starting from Libya after the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi, and because of the how porous our borders are. We practically do not have borders. People can easily come in and go out. It's very, very, very porous. We do not yet have an effective or clearly defined border policy or immigration policy along our porous borders. There are thousands of entry points along our borders that are not manned by customs nor by immigration. So criminal elements can have easy entry and easy exit. Then thirdly, because of the issue of ethnicity and religion, it has become very, very easy to tackle some of these problems at the communal levels. So in some cases where you have communal clashes between neighboring communities, they are easily attribute and label it as an ethnic or a religious clash or crime. So we have a mix of that, and the governors are not being alive to their responsibilities. There are a lot they can do. In my travels across this country, for those who are shouting, oh, community police, you realize that most of the police, at least 90%, serving within communities, LGAs and states, are actually policemen of that origin. They understand their language, they understand their culture, so it makes it very, very easy to police crimes or to police those communities. And if you look at it, that's essentially one of the major concepts of community policing, where you have members within the communities serving as policemen because they can speak the language and they understand the community, the geography and the terrain of that particular community. So the state governors just need to be proactive to support the federal police with equipment, with operational tools. And I mean, we've seen examples in different states whereby they nip some of these stuffs in the bud. But again, because many of these stuffs have been politicized, you have some states whereby, because it does not fit into ethnic and religious narrative, some section of the media is silent. But because it fits into certain ethnic narrative, they are loud about it. So there is often a lot of agenda, political agenda, to many of these crimes. So like in some states whereby we've had Eda, there was a situation whereby they arrested a major culprit and discovered that some government officials were complicit. And since then we've had less of such kind of so-called killer crimes.
Now, onto Zamfara State now.
Yes.
The situation in Zamfara is becoming deplorable by the day. lots of people are being killed, and we hear, over the media from time to time, whenever these bandits attack. What is responsible for this carnage, and what's...
Well, based on preliminary information released to the public through the various channels of the press, electronic and print, paperback media, it's been realized that illegal minings have actually fueled it. And one of the influencers, journalists have actually written is conflict, what they call it, diamond or gold terrorism, or blood diamond. So we have, because the mining activities over the years have gone largely unregulated and unchecked. A lot of criminal elements have actually taken up the mining activities, and as a result of competition for dominance amongst many of the those involved in the activities, there has been a lot of crimes, a lot of killings, whereby you have cases whereby they sack whole communities, where they discover that there is whereby you discover that there are ornaments of commercial quantity there. And based on the number of arrests and people who have been apprehended and paraded, you realize that many of the local government chairmen and even some royal or traditional rulers have been complicit. They've been kind of complicit in the whole illegal mining activities that has been happening there. But ever since the government decided to step up their activities in their intervention, especially their military intervention, putting boots on the ground and going into many of these illegal mining communities, they've been able to step down the tide of these killings and also illegal mining activities, especially with the effective announcement to the end of illegal mining, any form of mining activities in the states. So I think the government should be more proactive with regards to regulation and providing oversight on all of the mining activities taking place in Zamfara. And that will permanently nip or bring to the barest minimum the activities that are inspired by illegal mining.
Okay,
to inbound.
There are several operations, military operations.
Yes.
One of them is Operation Harvey Kunama.
Yes.
How would you appraise that operation?
They've been very, very effective. They've been able to kill a number of the criminal elements who have been rampaging the communities surrounding the mines. Week after week, we keep seeing the numbers. We keep seeing videos and pictures of those that have been arrested. We keep seeing how they ransack many bunkers where they store away caches of ammunition which they use to actually perpetrate many of these killings. So we've seen them expose their activities, we've seen them kill them, we've seen them parade these criminals, arrest them. We've seen royal fathers involved also arrested, and also government officials who are also complicit and involved in these activities.
Now, on a final note, do you think the government of President Muhammadu Buhari has the capacity to end violent crime, insurgency and insurrection around the country?
There is no society without violent crimes. The key is to be able to apprehend criminals and bring them to book, and also be proactive enough, have a law enforcement that is agile and proactive enough to be able to preempt certain criminal activities. It's most important when you do a per capita basis comparison of criminal activities, whether it is drug, whether it is kidnapping, whether it is homicide, gun violence, you realize that you have a lot of developed society who experience this more than Nigeria. But the problem, the difference in ours is that many of ours go unsolved and the criminals are not brought to book. So the most important thing that Buhari can do to actually stem drastically the tide of criminality, especially violence-oriented ones, kidnappings and all of that, is to reform the Nigerian police force. equip them, transform them into a 21st century law enforcement outfit that can actually carry out thorough and diligent investigation and see prosecution diligently through to the end until they secure conviction. Once they are able to do that, it will send a very strong message even to the criminals and will be criminals that we now have a 21st century law enforcement outfit that can actually fight crime before they grow into a cancer whereby we always have to require the intervention of the military.
I hope by this time it has not grown into a cancer already.
It has grown, and that is why right now practically military intervention is more or less like a chemotherapy, which is usually very painful to the victims because many lives have been lost, properties has been destroyed, children, a whole village has been sacked, villages have been sacked, townships are living in fear. But right now, with the ban on every form of illegal activities in Zamfara, and with more of the governors becoming more proactive and involved in the security of lives and properties within their states, and with Buhari trying to sign some executive orders to bring some semblance of community policing into the system. I mean, we have no reason not to experience better security of lives and properties, especially now as well that even local government chairmen are going to have some level of autonomy regarding their finances, so they will be able to craft and develop appropriate security strategies and support the police as well in carrying out their duties, especially at the local level. Let's not forget that the majority of Nigerians are living in the states and all under the purview of the local government. So all of these components feeds into the framework and architecture, a robust architecture of what you call solid security system of the country. Because if people are not empowered as well, if people are not educated, they are not going to school, they become disgruntled elements and willing tools in the hands of criminals, be it terrorists, illegal miners, kidnappers, name it. So all of this feeds into and contributes to building 21st century security architecture for the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure.
Yeah.
That was a security consultant and former member of the Nigerian Army Infantry Corps, Olajide Abiola, in that interview, speaking about threats by foreign interests seeking to truncate Nigeria's democracy and other issues. And reacting to the state of insecurity in the country, the United States Ambassador to Nigeria, His Excellency Ambassador Stuart Semington, said security forces alone can never secure any country, but rather must be supported and lifted by all stakeholder citizens. According to him, this is a chance for Nigeria to change the future of Nigerians, one nation at a time, by creating a path forward for every Nigerian. And that path begins with security that every Nigerian can contribute to. It begins with the education, monitoring, and civic virtue that every Nigerian can contribute to. And it begins with a kind of opportunity that every Nigerian wants to be part of. In our next episode of Security Dossier, we'll be featuring His Excellency Ambassador Semington, who will be speaking to us on the efforts of the United States government in providing support for Nigeria to end insurgency in the country and the Lake Chad Basin. This is the much we can take onto this episode of the program, Security Dossier. I hope you had a great time watching. Thank you for staying tuned until we come your way again next time. I remain your host, Lawrence Audu. Bye for now.